I'll put in my headphones.
Here we go.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelly Paris. I'm the Director of Events and the Secretary for Digital District. We're so happy that you're joining us for the conversation we're going to have about all things visual content. And I'm personally am really pumped for this panel because I think video and visual content is the way that the internet is going. I mean, I could watch cat videos all day long. I don't know about you, but they make me excited. So we're going to get going, but first let me introduce Jason Nellis, who is going to be our moderator of the conversation today. He has an extensive background at Hulu and PBS, and he now heads Overachiever Media out of DC. A couple of housekeeping things really quickly before I forget. If you have questions during the panel or you'd like to contribute, use the hashtag DDVisual. You can also submit questions via our contact form on our website, which is thedigitaldistrict.org. And without further ado, over to you, Jason.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Well, first I want to apologize. This was supposed to be a panel of 3 people, and Chris Kyler, formerly of Hulu as well, got called into a meeting with his CEO, so he's probably getting fired. And Rachel Sarnowski, who was going to join us, who's a writer for a variety of TV shows and producers in Los Angeles, unfortunately is stuck at home without internet. So we're going to hope that she's able to join if Time Warner Cable magically fixes things for her. If not, we, of course, will just have a conversation. We'll probably keep it a little shorter, maybe half hour, 40 minutes. But before I jump in, I'd first like to introduce Raymond. Raymond, why don't you tell the people a little about yourself?
Oh, well, thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry that we've lost our other participants today, but I think we'll make this somewhat entertaining for,
I hope so.
For those who are sticking around. Anyway, as Jason said, I work at PBS Digital Studios, which is a small team at PBS responsible for creating original video content for the web. So we basically focus on YouTube primarily as a platform and creating content that isn't just repurposed television, but content that is original for the web, built for audiences that are viewing online, whether mobile or on their PCs or laptops or whatever.
Sure.
Creating stuff that we think is really native for the digital generation, with the goal, of course, to bring in younger audiences to PBS to create content that's relevant, that starts new conversations. So basically, I work on that team. I focus on platform strategy and other aspects of sort of digital outreach. That's basically my spiel. I think that's about enough.
It's a good spiel. Let's start with this then. Raymond, can you talk a little bit about, because to give you all some background, I was at Hulu between 2008 and 2012. In 2013, I spent about 8 months working on the digital distribution team at PBS, which is separate from the team that Raymond is at. My job was more to ensure that content got delivered to the right distribution channels for delivery and promotion to partnerships like Amazon, iTunes, Hulu, Netflix, etc. So Raymond and I didn't actually work together in as much as I was not part of the world that he's in. So Ray, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on how PBS Digital Studios is markedly different, and also there's something going on in the background somewhere. I don't know where I'm hearing that. I hope nobody else is too. But Ray, if you could talk a little bit about sort of where Digital Studios strategy differs from PBS overall, and where you think it's really important to manage those distinctions.
Right. Well, I mean, I think in general terms, our strategy is really to create content for the web. So we don't really start with the premise that, we're here to sort of take stuff that already exists or take things that are on television and just sort of like repackage it nicely. Our goal and our strategy, therefore, is to basically create stuff that people are already watching online in that sort of style and that sort of delivery method, and use those best practices to create original content that represents the PBS brand, that pushes our mission of creating educational, thoughtful content, and sort of getting that out to a wide audience online and getting it shared. So our strategy is based, I would say, around those elements.
Sure.
Creating original content for the web, using the best practices of the web to create that content, and delivering it to people who can be our ambassadors for the content and share it themselves.
Sure, that makes sense. Let me ask you this: when you guys look for content, when you're adding to the content lineup for Digital Studios, what do you look for? I mean, beyond the sort of beyond sort of the PBS distinction on content, what are you guys specifically looking for that works in a digital space that might not work in traditional broadcast television, or might not even work without a certain kind of branding around it? What fits your content structure uniquely?
Well, I think beyond the core mission of, what goes with PBS as a brand, and I think that that's pretty obvious to anyone who's ever watched PBS, which is something that's thoughtful, educational, let's say with a small e, things that sort of make you think or inspire you. So, that's sort of the core, I would say, sense of content that we're looking for, right? But beyond that, we're really looking for stuff that has an eye for, people who are watching on YouTube. So stuff that engages the viewer, stuff that, asks for a response, that asks you to post a comment that will possibly be followed up in a future episode, or, something that sort of demands something from the viewer in terms of engagement that goes beyond just a passive enjoyment of the content.
Well, let's talk about that engagement for a minute then. I mean, which of your series gets the best response from viewers, and has that affected the kind of content that they generate, or the conversation of their content is affected by users? Is that
right?
What works well there?
Yeah, I mean, our most popular series, the PBS Idea Channel, as well as PBS Game Show and a show called It's Okay to Be Smart, are shows that really actively engage the viewer in every episode. So there's usually a segment at the end of an idea channel, at the end of a game show, that asks viewers a question, it poses a thought, and asks for a response in the comments. And each week, we'll get thousands and thousands of responses from viewers that range from, trolls who write one line, whatever, to people who write thoughtful paragraphs and essays almost that are responses to the content. And so the next week, the host of the show picks out the best comments, or the ones that probably raise the most interesting points, and addresses them in the next week's episode. So, there's a sense that you're not just writing comments into an empty vacuum, right? You're actually participating not only with the other viewers, but with the host. I mean, you're this is a conversation. So those shows, not surprisingly, are by far and away our most popular and successful series, because people feel, I think, connected to the show. They want to share it with their friends. They want to participate week after week. And I think those in general are the kind of series that do well online.
Well, online's such a unique opportunity. I mean, I think, with my time at Hulu, we were so focused, initially at least, we were so laser focused on ensuring a broadcast quality, I can't speak today. Broadcast quality experience online. The early focus was really Hulu as a technology platform to take really good-looking content and make sure that it stays really good-looking online. Quality is certainly something that you guys focus on as well. I know in our conversations you've discussed how certain series will get pitched to you, and you've absolutely had to ask the question, do we think that the quality bar on this is high enough to match what we're aiming for? Can you speak a little to what you look for as those characteristics? I mean, are there things that that are on a checklist that you have to mark off before you can say this reaches that, or is it more of a gut feeling in that regard?
Right. In terms of quality, the web has really changed along the parameters for what we define as quality, right?
Yeah.
I think what you found at Hulu probably that, when taking things from television or that were movies or whatever, there's a high bar of what people expect in terms of the quality of content.
Well, and we're also talking about production values that are very different from what people had been experiencing up until that point.
Absolutely, right. So I think in terms of quality in that respect, for repurposed content, repackaged content, the bar remains high as it should be, right? So if you're going on to look at Breaking Bad episodes on Netflix, you're not going to accept some grainy, bad audio version of Breaking Bad. You're going to want the best, right?
Yeah.
So, for original web content, though, I think the standard is a little different. And I think quality means less of production quality and more of engagement quality, right? So is the show something that I'm going to sit and watch past the first 10 seconds, right? I mean, if you see drop-off rates for content in general online, it's remarkable how quickly people will drop off of bad content.
Sure.
Right? Within the first 5 seconds, they've clicked on something else. So I think the bar of quality now is set in terms of how long is a user going to be interested in your content, whether that's how dynamic the presentation is, how clean the editing is, there's a number of elements that go into it. But I think that's what we're looking for more in terms of that, rather than, wow, it's shot on a red camera and the soundtrack is phenomenal and it's got top name actors in it. I think there's a different set of standards we look for, and I think all online producers now look for.
Well, let's talk about quality of production then, because I think one of the concerns that I've had as I've started my company and been building it out is I want to make sure that as I start to focus in the video space and I'm starting to work with people to, build, whether it's content for a website or if I'm helping them sort of get their web series started, production value and the opportunity to really make a lot with very little is now greater than it's ever been, right? I mean, it is actually easy to hook up an iPhone 5 to a decent microphone, and you can actually film something that way. It's not going to look like it came out of Hollywood, but it's going to look very good. Do you guys have? Well, let me ask this in two parts. First, what do you think of as being necessary to good production? What are if you had to tell people you want to go make your own web series, here are the absolute basic parts of your production you need. And then second to that, what's a budget look like for, in a range? I mean, should we tell people that, $1,000 per minute is what you should expect to spend, or should we tell people that it's not a matter of what you spend, it's how you spend it?
That's a good question. There's no perfect kit for going out and starting to make web video. And that's both good and bad, right? Bad in the sense that I can't just tell you, go buy this camera and this mic and you're going to look great and you're all set, right? But it's good in the sense that there's actually a lot of options that will help, that basically will give you something that people will want to watch, right? Like you said, an iPhone now has basically gotten to the point where you can shoot something with an iPhone and, perhaps a plugged-in microphone and really get pretty good quality. If it's on a tripod, it's steady, it looks good, the audio is clear, you probably could pull that off in 9 out of 10 cases, right? And that's obviously that maybe you already have one in your pocket and that's zero cost, right? But beyond that, if you're looking to take a production to, say, the next level, right, and this might be something that's a little longer, that maybe features, multiple shots, or you have to be moving around and stuff. I think a lot of people now have turned to DSLR cameras, which are really popular photography cameras for, cheaper, I should say, cheaper and easy solution to high-quality video. There are models by Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, basically all the big brands that are designed more and more now for video because they know people have basically co-opted these cameras and use them online, and they look fantastic. So that would be my step. If you're looking to get beyond, say, the iPhone, MacBook webcam level, the next level is probably DSLR. And I would say the price range for that starts, for the equipment around $700 or $800 and goes up from there. So that's a nice setup. I would say for about $1,000 you can get a really nice video setup for your business, for your personal web show, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's unthinkable. 10 years ago, that was unthinkable.
Oh, it's incomprehensible 10 years ago. Yeah. Well, what about lighting? What about sound? I mean, one of the things that I get asked a lot is, you're showing up with a camera. Do we need to bring in extra equipment as well? I mean,
right.
I know some cameras and good editors can fix some of that, but what are the things that people should be, sort of focused on when they're setting these things up? Is it more important to get the really good camera, or is it okay to get a lower grade camera if you make sure that you have really good lighting and sound too?
Right. In the editing world, we always say that that sound really is difficult to replace. Video can always be replaced, believe it or not. You can always sort of drop in B-roll. You can always just cut to something else entirely. But unless you have really good, clean audio, you're going to have a problem. So my first recommendation would be to get yourself a good setup with audio. Okay, whether that's an external microphone, the lavalier mics are the ones that are clipped to your shirt. Those produce really good quality. There are even small units now that are sort of all-in-one audio recorders.
Sure.
A company named Zoom makes a few really nice models. There's a ton of other companies that do it as well. So I would say the first thing is really get yourself some good audio. Then think about video quality overall. That those sort of go hand in hand, of course. And then lighting, I think it's important you mention that, right? I've seen so many things that are killed by bad lighting. And, even today, I tried to think about setting up the shot for this, lovely hangout we're doing.
You did light it very well.
I strategically positioned myself with the sun coming in, right? I mean, I figured, without the use of artificial lighting, I can still make a good setup with just this. And that's a good point, too. You don't always have to have expensive lights and all, movie set style lighting. Even if you just use natural lighting to your advantage by putting it behind the camera, 9 times out of 10, it's going to make your video look a million times better.
So what you're saying is the way I've lit my little booth here is perfect because it's catching the angle of my.
I was just going to say that.
I mean, I don't know about you. I think I look great. So that's good. I appreciate that.
Right.
See, I'm
Even better than real life, Jason.
Well, I think a lot of things are better than real life in my instance.
Anyway, but those,
Yeah.
all those points I think are very important to consider, lighting, audio, and video.
Very cool. Well, listen, appreciate that so far, guys. Those of you watching at home or at your office, because you should be working instead. Just a reminder: hashtag #DDVisual is the Twitter hashtag. If you want to ask questions, we're going to be certainly pulling some in the next few minutes. I just got a note from Rachel who says that they're going to try and reboot her router, so we may get a last-minute entry here. We may go the full hour. We'll see. It could be could go either way here, folks, but we're going to try our best. So, given that this is just you and me, I guess it's sort of fair to let you ask any questions that you had about Hulu. I know you and I have talked about it extensively, but, I don't know, any questions you ever had that I could certainly address?
Well, maybe not questions, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I just saw something today, actually. I think Hulu has put out a new thing called Summer Film School.
Okay.
I think it's through Hulu, and this might be an interesting thing to check out if you're interested.
Oh, I have seen this promotion. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're interested in learning maybe a little bit more about basic filmmaking techniques. I'm assuming it's free, but it's part of Hulu. They're doing a whole series on how to make films.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a version of it that is free, but one of the things that I would certainly promote and advocate is it's like writers who say you can't write unless you read a lot too, right? Ultimately, if you're going to do video in any capacity, it's always important to go and find the right comps, the right examples and templates to follow. And whether it's a film school thing like that, or Hulu has the Criterion Collection, which is some of the greatest cinema makers of all time. I mean, it's not necessary if you're doing a 2-camera setup for your little talk show at home, but it is certainly useful to get a lot of history of cinema, a lot of the early techniques. One of my favorite films, Rashomon, is on there, and that's the story of something happening in 4 different perspectives. I mean, I think that kind of stuff is certainly valuable. Clickhole has a great article today about how Hulu is bringing back Circuit City, and it made me laugh way too loud. It was great.
It is great. Well, here's a question for you from your time at Hulu. Perhaps you can lend a little insight into this. When Hulu is looking for a series, let's say Hulu is looking for an original series, so what's that process like for you guys? For us, it's a little bit different because we're YouTube and we're educational, that sort of thing. But for Hulu, which is I guess purely entertainment, view driven, what do you think is the process that you guys go through? How is that different from ours?
When I was there, it was in its early stages. So let me just say, for the sake of covering everything and all of our bases, that I haven't been there for 2 years, and when I was there, it was in the early stages. And of course, nothing I say represents the express opinion of Hulu. Blah blah blah. I think early on, there was always a constant conversation of how do we want to position ourselves in the market. So from a Hulu perspective, from that 20,000-foot view, we were always looking at how do we want to differentiate from guys like Netflix. Amazon Prime had just announced it was going to start doing stuff. We'd been in the space long enough to be able to see that there were other competitors in other spaces. So I think Hulu took a very specific look early on to be auteur-driven, and that's A-U-T-E-U-R, not misspelling author, not missaying author. But it was very much driven by the idea that we wanted to follow people who had very specific viewpoints. And I think that's still very true today. I mean, even in the comedy stuff, even in, I think they just released Hot Housewives of Orlando, which is a parody of all the Real Housewives stuff. It's not an attempt to ride a specific wave. It's an attempt to say something in comedy that's very specific and particular. It's a commentary on reality television. It's starring some talent from SNL and The Office and a whole bunch of other spots. People you look at and go, oh, I totally remember her from that show. And I think that idea of very specific things to say and using video to communicate them effectively was always the early intent. You can say that about anybody, right? Netflix certainly has that to an extent. But I think Hulu's was really driven by the idea that people would respond most to viewpoints and opinions that were specific, rather than content that is general and attempting to be as ubiquitous as possible. So I think for us during my time there, it was as important to find something that had good quality of production, good quality of script, all the right elements there. But on top of that was really generally, or specifically I should say, aiming towards something to say. And as far as I can tell, they've maintained that today too. It's definitely not the kind of thing that seems to have been fading away from their strategy, at least as far as I can tell.
It's interesting. Yeah, not surprising. I mean, I think some of the Hulu originals are really, they live up to their name, I should say.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, early on we did, I worked with I can't think of it, Warrior Poets was the name of the production company. It was Morgan Spurlock's company. So if you ever saw 30 Days on FX or, Super Size Me or any of that, Where in the World is Osama bin Laden, the idea behind the series was he was following people. It was a day in the life, and he was taking people both of a very popular, will.i.am was on it. Richard Branson was in the first season, but he was also looking at a mayor of a small industrial town in Pennsylvania who's trying desperately to revitalize his city. It followed an up-and-coming ballerina who, she was a black ballerina, which is very rare in that world, and talking about her experiences and growing up in a, in a world that is not typical of other young black women, or even in the first season. I think his name was Russell Peters, was a comedian. I think now he's on what the hell is the Last Comic Standing, excuse me, on NBC. Right. And it was following him and talking about how, just how each individual person's world is so uniquely different that it's worth exploring them in a way that's beyond the 15 minutes of the glamour and glitz and really a true 24-hour period, the highs and the lows. I think the Richard Branson one was a good example of one where he's meeting with all these interesting people, but it also shows him curling up in a Virgin Atlantic booth for an hour and a half and just knocking work out. And just the idea that he gets to do a lot of really cool stuff, but the man also gets his stuff done. I always enjoyed that. I think that resonated with audiences, and they've been good about doing content like that since. And I certainly look to it as a good bar for quality in that regard. On your guys' side, I mean, do you guys have stuff coming out that speaks to a different viewpoint? I know that everything is very unique with what you guys do, but is there anything that you can point to that maybe people can go check out after the session here that really speaks to a very specific idea or a very specific sort of artistic vision that they can look at that's maybe applicable both to creative endeavors as well as business endeavors?
That's a good question. I mean, we have a pretty diverse selection of content on our network, on our ever-growing network, I should say. We're adding shows relatively frequently now. We have one coming out in the fall called Frankenstein MD, and that should be pretty interesting. I don't know if any of the viewers today have seen the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which are pretty popular on YouTube. Same creator, and we've sort of worked with them to sort of retell the story of Frankenstein, but using modern-day characters in a modern-day setting, playing as doctors, and it's really a clever way to sort of teach sort of literature, classic literature, but through sort of a modern lens with an audience that's already built in and people that already know these characters, and some of the actors in the show are well known.
Sure.
So, that's one approach we're kind of taking. Go really for something that's attention-grabbing, that gets people interested, that's partly fictional, but also has a smart science element to it. You know, one of the challenges we have is, well, how do you get people to really watch educational or informative content without feeling like they're just watching Khan Academy or something that's really dry and boring and should be on local access television, something from 20 years ago, right? No one wants to watch that online. So one of the ways we sort of look to do it is well, who's already successful on YouTube? Who's already doing amazing things? What can we work with them? Can we partner with them in some way, or can we adopt their style? And that seems to work really well. Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
And that's something in general. You don't have to feel like you're going to be the most original person on the web, because you're not going to be. It's impossible. So adopt some of the things that work. Borrow styles and make them your own, and sort of rework things and combine things. That seems to be the most successful stuff online nowadays.
Sure.
It's not brand new. It just reworks old things in interesting ways.
Yeah. Well, let's shift a little bit. So we've got a couple questions from Twitter that we want to start looking at, and I think we're going to move a little bit away from what you and I have been talking about, which is more you're putting together a creative series of some kind, and more sort of the business type video that some people are asking about. So Lauren Green at Lauren S for the promotional opportunity there has asked a couple questions. The first. Talk about live recorded versus pre-recorded when promoting interviews with experts. So let's, for example, talk about the value of a live interview like this versus a pre-recorded one. How much do you? Let's start with the basics. how much do you edit there? Do you just set up two cameras, let the whole thing run, and go back and forth, or do you try to cut it down? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, live, has been and always, I think, will be sort of a tough game, right? There's just too many variables, a lot of sort of expectations and things that, directions that things can go that are unexpected. And I think it depends on your ultimate goal, right? If you're trying to produce something that sort of random people are going to watch down the road, they're going to stumble upon it, the likelihood of them sitting through some unedited, uncut live interview that goes on for 45 minutes is probably pretty low. Unless the names.
So you're saying our audience drop off here is going to be just significant.
Well,
Thank you.
I think if you're engaged in it while it's happening, you have a better chance of success. So if the question is, well, should I do a live shoot and then just put that up online unedited? I would say probably not. I would say take, if you're going to do a live event like we're doing, have a hangout, have people, participating live. But if you're going to do a segment that you put online, cut it down a little bit. You know, sort of take the best out of it and sort of use little pieces as sort of individual modules. That's probably more successful for a live.
Yeah. I would even take it to the next step and say cut the fat. I mean, in a conversation like this, we've probably had a bunch of uhs and stumbles and that sort of thing. And if you're going to record it, particularly whether it's for promoting a specific interview or if it's promoting an event of some kind, you gotta play to that hook. You got to be able to reel them in, and it's got to be as engaging as possible. Like you said earlier, if it's not interesting in the first few seconds, people will get bored very quickly and they'll move on. And it's more important to ensure that you're hooking them early and keeping them there, rather than finding a way to sort of encapsulate the entirety of the conversation in a single video.
Online, shorter is almost always better. I mean, that's just a general rule.
It's true. Sad but true.
So
how did we get such low
unfortunately, live by it.
Yeah. Oh, a pony. Anyway, not as funny as I thought it was going to be. So Lauren's other question before I completely destroy this conversation. What advice do you have for organization getting started with Hangouts or video webinars like this? Setup tips, interview strategies, etc. Well, Lauren, I can certainly address some of that. I mean, I think first, make sure you coordinate ahead of time as much as possible.
That's a good start.
I think we were bad about that, but boy, we had some last-minute things here that just threw us curveballs. But actually, truth of the matter is, I mean, ultimately, that's my first piece of advice: be flexible. In the end, it's never going to end up exactly as you anticipate. So be sure that you're in a place that is more able to respond, I would say. So in terms of setups or strategies, I mean, Ray, you talked about this a little bit earlier. Lighting is important. Sound is important. Is it important to, we didn't really talk ahead of time. Is it important to coordinate with the interviewee ahead of time, or do you feel like you're comfortable in having a conversation sort of off the cuff?
Well, I mean, I feel comfortable, but in general, having a group of people talking together, it might be good to have some sort of an interaction before the actual event, if possible. If for no other reason than to just test the technology too. Everybody's on a different connection, everybody's got a different machine and whatever. These aren't things you want to sort out day of, or rather minute of, right? So if you can schedule a pre-hangout and just sort of get all the kinks worked out, and maybe get a chance for everyone to sort of meet each other, I think that'd probably be a little more successful. Especially with a bigger group, if you had more than two.
So what you're saying is that I kind of ruined this for you. I get that. I understand.
I don't think I said that.
No, I think you implied it.
No.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, for me, I always look at these as conversations, and I think ultimately the best interviewers do. I think that the ones that I've ever watched that feel the most relaxed, you get the most honest answers from people, are ones where you're not, staring at a series of questions and, can you tell me about this, and then let them answer. Can you tell me about this, and then let them answer. That it's much more conversational, fluid, responsive, reactive. You're in the moment with somebody. It's for me at least. I mean, I think that the best parts of these are when you get thrown curveballs and you have to sort of just follow them and see where they go. At least.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also a relatively cheap and easy way to create content. If you're looking to create, a lot of video, and you don't have the budget or the time or the resources to set up a lot of shoots, to produce a lot of segments, do all that, an hour segment on a hangout like this could produce 10 great videos for your YouTube channel. And that's an easy thing to do. So That's one way to look at it as well. You know, you're getting a lot for not that much investment. You know,
Sure.
especially if the quality is high and the conversation is good, you're going to get a lot of nice pieces of content out of that.
Sounds good. Again, guys, just as a reminder, hashtag #DDVisual if you have any questions or comments. I would be also happy to hear your responses to questions about good or terrible content on either PBS or Hulu. I'm sure we could field some of those questions if we really wanted to. Well, in the meantime, let's stick to the Hangouts and webinar stuff. I mean, do you know of any resources that people should look at? And the answer whatever suits you best. But what should people look to from a guide or tutorial, learning that you can recommend? I mean, obviously you talked about the Hulu series before about summer film school,
Sure.
and there's certainly no better teacher than just doing. But you can only get so far by trying to figure it out yourself. Do you have any resources that you can think of, that might be worthwhile?
For specifically a Hangout or just for video in general?
Just for video in general.
In general. Oh, there are a ton of great tutorials, ranging from I don't know what a camera is to, how do I make my, my feature-length film, color corrected. So I mean, there's really a whole range of great tutorials out there. I would recommend just searching for what you're looking for specifically.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to set up a shot and you don't know where the lighting should go. Just search for how to set up lighting for a video shoot, and you'll find that there are a ton of really good guides. They can really walk you through it. So there's not one in particular I would say is the go-to, because everyone is really at a different level of learning. But I will say that they're all out there if you look. And the more specific you are, I think the better help you're going to get. So that's probably my best advice. But definitely check out that Hulu series. Seems pretty good. Vimeo, Vimeo.com, has a really good film school as well. And those are just basically online videos, tutorials that guide you through the whole process. So
yeah, that's
another place to look. Especially if you're more inclined to sort of be producing more stylistically significant pieces. If you're trying to look at multiple angles or sort of more emotionally captivating shots, or I don't know what else you'd be doing, that's a great place to look. Vimeo is awesome. As well as the Vimeo community. You can learn a lot from the people on there.
Okay. So here's a good one. We can dig into this one. It comes from our own Elliot Volkman, the president of, well, I don't actually know his title. I assume Grand Poobah is sort of what I call him, but whatever. One of the Grand Poobahs of Digital District here. Taco Master, as he refers to himself. For small businesses who want to create videos, not demos or webinars, but actual creative videos, what are some good ways to come up with creative video ideas? So I think I would start to answer this question by simply saying, well, what do you want to end up with, right? What's the purpose that a video is going to serve? If it's, I want to write a script and I want to produce a web series, that's a very different question than I want to promote my business and I want to demo the software that we're building that, you can buy into for a subscription. So, let's pretend it's the latter versus the former, but, I don't know, there's lots of different things, you can do in terms of creative ideas. You can start to write it, as though you were writing a very traditional commercial, and then you can try to find a way to subvert it. You can, do a very animated type thing if you know somebody who can help you put that together. I mean,
animation can be expensive.
Animation can be. You're absolutely right. I should say that. Animation can be even more expensive.
Animation is probably not a good approach.
Sure.
I would say.
Hold on. I want to contradict you there.
You're right. You're right. It's not always expensive, but it can be.
Yes, but I know, for example, like during Startup Weekend last year, one of the groups that I helped mentor did a video for their demo, and they did the whiteboard drawings, right? So that's sort of animation, but it's really a series of pictures that are really just being sort of, cut and spliced together.
That's true.
I mean, something like that's certainly doable.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's creative ways to get around it. When I mean animation, I'm referring to like really beautiful graphics and all those. You see a lot of these now. There's sort of a style for this quirky animation, as I like to call it. Those can be very expensive, but as you said, Jason, there's other ways to do that and pull off an animated look pretty cheaply. Whiteboard is a great one, chalkboard, even just stop motion, building things and sort of creating little things. It's easier than you think. It just takes a lot of time.
That's
not
the kind of thing you want to hold for a weekend.
No, that's a good approach.
Yeah. Well, there's other services too. I mean, I did want to point out that there are certainly several businesses that have made, their mark on the world. I was looking at one the other day, Tweli, TWELI.com, which is a site that is trying to be sort of the YouTube for small business online retailers, right? So rather than integrating video into Etsy, their whole concept is we're going to help you make a video that really promotes your business, and then we're going to give you a place to sell it, but video is sort of primary. So in that instance, there are organizations that want you to use their services to build video. I'm always a little hesitant of those, only because I've never actually used them. The product demos always seem just a little too good to be true, and the video animation style always looks exactly the same. So you are in that position of my animated video looks exactly like these other 6 companies because we all use the same product at the $20 price mark. Yeah, so it's worth bearing in mind, I think, that looking unique, feeling above and beyond others is certainly a quality consideration that I think, Raymond, you and I would both agree is something to bear in mind.
Absolutely, and I think online, things that work well are humor, light content, quick cuts, things like that are what people are used to watching online. The minute you start getting dull, boring, monotone, or whatever, and it becomes the same video, that's the sort of thing people are not going to want to watch, and they're probably not going to associate your brand with being cool or interesting or any of those things.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for somebody to sort of appreciate your brand online, it's okay to be a little more humorous than you might be in your other content in terms of marketing, right? I've seen a lot of brands veer in that direction, and it works out successfully. The ultimate win is becoming, a viral hit, which obviously is impossible to sort of generate, but there's a lot of things that work, and it usually involves either humor or some incredible stunt or something that's really dramatic and that would cause you to share it with your friend. That's the action that you're going for, right? So think in those terms, and I would say be willing to take a little bit of risk. People forget things on the web very quickly too. So if you make a really colossal mistake, chances are it's less significant than if you printed something in the New York Times that was
Do you print a lot of things in the New York Times?
All the time.
Really? That's
personally, I always take out a full page ad in the.
Well, I think you should. I mean, otherwise, what's the point, right? I mean, otherwise, it's wasted time.
But anyway, in general, I think that's a good thing to go by. Look what does well online and emulate that. Funny stuff. Cat videos do well because people like watching that. Whether that's right or wrong is a whole different conversation. But you might as well go for what's successful and emulate it. And it's not that hard to do. It's not that expensive to pull off. I think people have a little bit of fear of the price tag in terms of like creating video for the web. It's not like what it used to be for television. You don't have to set aside $25,000 for a decent ad. It can be done.
Well, the only other thing I would say to that is to respond back just to say, don't think you can look like Scorsese on a $500 budget, right? Know your limitations.
Oh, appreciate it. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm encountering with some of my clients is they say I've got $1,000, but I need it to look like this. It's like, well, you're not going to get that. I can do $1,000 worth of stuff, and I can even make it look like $2,000 worth of stuff, but I can't do a $25,000 budget on a shaky handheld camera and somebody's leftover microphone from 1978. So
now expectations have to be realistic. But I think in general, if you're afraid because of price, I think you can look at it as a chance to do more creative things with the content. There's just ways to leverage the cost better than in years past, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, look, I think unfortunately Rachel is unsuccessful in getting her internet going, so we'll wrap up in a few minutes. Before we go, though, any PBS series that you want to point to as things people should check out, either just because they're interesting or because you got them launched and you want to make sure that people check them out and enjoy them?
Oh, I would definitely say check out the content we have. I think people will be surprised by the stuff that's in our network right now, and like I said, it's ever growing. We're always adding new stuff. So if you search PBS Digital Studios on YouTube, you'll find basically you'll either find our main channel or one of our partner channels. And I just recommend browsing. There's some really great stuff on there, ranging from pop culture, science, gaming, cooking, arts, you name it. We've got something that's relevant.
Cool.
And I think it'll surprise you. It's
Well, more importantly, even for those who aren't necessarily looking to generate their own web original content, it may give some very good pointers and some ideas about the kinds of formats that they could go in a different direction of. If you're building a series around your business, it doesn't hurt to make really good content and not just sort of an extended advertisement. So
absolutely.
Very cool. Well, listen, thank you again for your time.
If you want, I can end with something a little more interesting. I have a really nice camera with me. Let me show it off.
Ooh, sure. Go for it.
Okay, give me 1 sec. Let me get it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is going to be worth the wait. Let me find it.
That's okay. Go ahead. We'll entertain in the meantime. So we're going to wrap up probably a little bit sooner, guys, than the end. I hope you've appreciated it. Of course, you can see Raymond going for the camera. Oh, good Lord. It's in a whole case. It's a thing. In the meantime, if those of you are interested in hearing more about Overachiever Media and what we do, overachievermedia.com. We've got a newsletter you guys should check out.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Good Lord. Wow,
can you hear me?
That's a real thing.
Yeah, this is really a nice piece of equipment. This is the Canon C100 EOS cinema camera. Okay, a beautiful camera. This actually has a 4K sensor in it, as you can see there.
Yes, because women will look at that and go, "Oh, 4K, obvious."
4K sensor, although it records to standard HD 1080. A really fantastic piece of equipment. This is probably the current standard for documentary cameras. So, if you know someone shooting a relatively low to mid-budget documentary film, this is probably what they're shooting on. It's about $5,000, so it's not cheap. However, this is worth the money. So, if you are a business of means, I will say, and you're looking to invest in something that's really going to last you for a while, I would say, this is really quite a treat. It produces phenomenal quality video. Is very I would say simple to use, but it's straightforward. There are no surprises. Everything is sort of contained in the unit. As you can see, very portable. And you can attach lenses to it. It's a really phenomenal piece of equipment. Has a nice little screen here, etc. Anyway, just showing off gear. This is what I love to do.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that. That is impressive, and I'm sure
not sponsored by Canon. That ad that I just gave for Canon C100.
yeah. I'm sure it's a steal at twice the price. Yeah. Good Lord. Well, on that note, Raymond, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it.
My Christmas list.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Ask for this this Christmas.
Right. You may be using up a couple of future Christmases on that one
right.
too.
You may have to take another mortgage out on your house, but it's worth it. Really great camera.
Very cool. Well, listen, guys, thank you again for the time. Again, Raymond from PBS Digital Studios. Check out their work online. You're going to enjoy it. I'm Jason Nellis, overachievermedia.com. Check us out. Newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Kelly, bring us home.
Yeah. Before we jump off, again, thank you all for joining us. Sorry we pared down, but I still think it was a great conversation, and I am going to look into that camera. Yeah. If you have any other topics that you would like us to cover in the future, please use the hashtag DDVisual, and we'll compile all those, and we'll get you some more web panels that are right up your alley. So thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Good luck.
Bye.